Welcome back to the Pod 4 podcast with Darren and Declan. Today we're going to be discussing The Wilds, volumes 1 through 5. And I'm Darren.
And I'm Declan.
All right, let's get started. My initial impressions of the story were very positive. I thought it was well written, even though it had some parts that were confusing. I think it had really interesting themes of power struggle between people who have to work and people who have more power and less labor, And there was also the moral dilemma between those who, is it worth saving the lives of a few people at the demise of others? And I thought that was really interesting to read.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I like the take from more just I think more brainless zombies eating flesh to more of a Mother Nature reclaiming the earth. And I also I thought it had some interesting themes about I think you kind of said necessary evil in society, and suffering for some while other people prosper.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was really interesting, and that whole returning to nature feeling was definitely interesting to read about. And we're going to talk about how that connected to Cloud Sky Dragons by N.K. Jemisin. And our first claim is that about the power struggle of oppressed peoples being overworked for the gain of, in this case, it was a man in a higher position than Daisy and all of the other runners. And I have a quote that says, "Funny how when men talk like you talk about sacrifices, they always mean people like me." And that was from issue 4. And I thought that was that can relate to our own society because of how there's a lot of injustice going on right now and that kind of relates to power struggle and class. And I thought that was interesting. And I have another quote that says, "We sign away our safety, our freedom, and you work us till we collapse or die out there, and then replace us with another." And when I read that, I immediately thought of children working in third world countries, for example, the fast fashion business, the industry. And I was like, wow, she's definitely trying to get at that kind of industrialization problems and the problems that come with that, and people who are put in positions where these kids are not paid more, they're not paid much, and they have to create these items of clothing at horrible conditions. And the runners are kind of in the same spot, that they can't quit because they also have a dilemma that they don't want to live out in the wilds, but they also have a moral dilemma that we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that kind of oppression thing happens in most post-apocalyptic stories. Society will typically revert to some forms of feudalism, which in general has one person as the leader who basically gives orders and has people just work and work and work, which generally creates usually an oppressed class of serfs or basically slaves that will work for them endlessly.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about. I didn't think about the feudalism and how that really sums it up. And I was actually thinking it's similar in The Walking Dead, because you have we're going to talk about this later too. You have people like the governor or Negan who are at the top and in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, and the people below them are stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they go out, they're probably going to die, but if they stay, they're suffering from the injustice in that whole society.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. So for our second claim, we said that that Daisy is definitely aware of her compound's injustices, but she keeps quiet. She fears that it could hurt her or those she cares about. And some of the quotes we have are that maybe it's a numbers game for you, but it isn't for me. And that's from issue 1. and also that it'll never be enough, and not as long as the world's ended. And that's also from the first issue. And both of them are basically talking about she realized she can see in the community like the hardship that people have to go through, especially the runners. And as one of them, she knows that even though they do suffer, that their job is essential to the survival of all of the different towns, in that they need to be the ones to bring supplies back and forth to help them keep food stocks, ammo stocks, weapon stocks, to be able to protect themselves from either other humans or the undead.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I agree with that. And I would also add on that I think Daisy has a lot of uh, obligation that's holding her to continue to work for the compound and get supplies because her girlfriend lives there, and she's the more food she brings in, the more ammo she brings in, the more supplies she brings in. She's benefiting not only her girlfriend but also the people of the compound who are her friends and family. And that's why a lot of the runners, like their contracts are up, but they continue to go out and get supplies until they die because that moral obligation.
Actually, yeah, one thing I did find odd was that I feel like sending out more than one person to scavenge supplies would not only increase your survival chances, but having more people would allow you to also collect supplies faster. So I don't know why they would. I mean, I don't know why they just send one person out at a time to go scavenge. Or I would understand going to trade, because if they're just going from one place to another, you're not going to get there faster from having more than one person. But if you're just going out and just survivability and just fighting stuff, it would be smarter to take more than one person.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you bring out more people, you can get more supplies brought in more efficiently. And I was thinking that like that might be a good idea for them, but they also might have the problem of like gasoline for their cars and not having enough cars.
Or just, I mean, or they just might not have a lot of people. Like, I mean, if they only have 100 people, even losing one person is just like, that's a 1% gone, which is not good.
Yeah, yeah, and like they're not having they wrote in there that they don't have many volunteers, and that was actually for the medical trials too. That they have to kind of recruit people for that. Well, in the medical trials, it was more forcing, but there's not a lot of volunteer runners, but they do have a moral obligation. The ones that continue to run, and then for claim 3, we say that the ones who walk away from Omalaz is similar in that both stories have a society that is flawed but continues to survive, that is based in injustice. And uh, I thought that the child in Omalaz is similar to the runners because both societies, Omalaz and the compound, they can only survive as long as the people who are like the child, as long as it is suffering and in that cellar, the society survives. And as long as the runners continue to go out and die for supplies, the compound survives. And that necessary evil, I think, can relate to our own society. Like I was talking about the fast fashion earlier, but also about different industries within our own lives that impact us every day. That necessary evil is just part of our lifestyle. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
and it's pretty obvious. Like, you could even draw the comparison. Like, Mela's like, all the people know about the child and that they're suffering. And in the story, everyone knows what a runner's job is. And you said before that very few people volunteer to be a runner because it's dangerous. And it's that kind of thing, like, everybody knows it can be dangerous and like feels sorry for you, but they don't really want to help you because either they just don't want to like risk themselves trying to get food or whatever, or yeah, they don't want to risk themselves, but they still feel bad. They just won't really do anything to help you.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that it was sort of like the ones who stay and fight because uh the caretakers and the ones who stay and fight, well, it was like not similar. It was kind of the opposite, because in the ones who stay and fight, that whole society is based on actively fighting injustice, while in Omalaz, their society is based in injustice and the suffering of the child. Um, and I thought that was a interesting comparison. And um,
And so for our fourth claim, you were talking about whether it was worth it or not for Daisy to save her girlfriend and kind of destroy the medical facility, which, from our point of view in the story, seemed to kind of doom the human race, because it talked in the story about the fact that very few people could reproduce because of the bacteria. And the people inside the medical facility were trying to find a way to, well, cure people and allow people to have more children and to basically rebuild humanity. For instance, one of the guys says, this is from issue 3, "This isn't about you. This is bigger than any one person. This is about the survival of the human race. I won't leave it to chance that you people might come to understand the importance of my work. I will not ask you to allow humanity to survive." And so he's basically like kind of saying, I'm not going to let you decide whether or not humanity survives. It needs to survive. And kind of like, does she really think that the entire human race is worth the few lives that, they might have to sacrifice in order to find a cure? And like, my main questions are like, for Daisy, like, is her happiness just to save her lover worth the entire extinction, possibly, of the human race?
yeah, I was thinking about that. And I was actually kind of laughing because I didn't think. Oh, well, after I was done reading that story, I was like, wait a second, like they're saving Daisy and they're saving the few Daisy's saving her girlfriend and they're saving the few other people who haven't been tested on, haven't been turned into abominations, but they're dooming the entire human race. And I thought that was kind of funny that, like, okay, wow, I don't know if this is worth it. That is the entire human race. I think that's a little bit more important than a few lives. But if you're in that state, and I think Daisy, that's all she has to live for at that point, is the people, like mostly her girlfriend, but also the fellow survivors that are all she has left, and that she has a real emotional attachment to them.
Yeah, it's just kind of like that like that you've probably heard of like the train scenario, like there's a train coming and there's one person on one track and 5 on the other. In this case, it's like, oh, you can save humanity, or you can let humanity be saved, or have Daisy's girlfriend and the people she cares about be killed. And of course, from her point of view, she's like, well, I want to save the ones I love because she loves them. However, when you step back and really think, is it worth it for humanity to keep on surviving? I mean, obviously, you would say we would want humanity to survive from our point of view, because we think humanity is something that is good well, not necessarily good in nature, but a force that will persist on into the future rather than dying out like in this story.
Yeah. I mean, from her point of view, I probably would have done the same if it was someone I loved. But I don't think they were thinking. They were more like they were probably had the mindset of like the human race is already doomed. Like it's not going to get better. The trials are probably not going to work. I mean, they've already tested on enough people. Or maybe they weren't thinking at all. I don't know. But it's an interesting dilemma in the story. And I thought this kind of related to Halat and the ones who stay and fight, because you have that kind of the medical central people are similar to the caretakers, that the caretakers kill those who are going to corrupt Halat. And you would say like, wow, that's evil, that's injustice, that's you're killing somebody, but it's for the good of the rest of humanity. So I mean, I don't think there's a right answer to it, but it's just, I saw that as a connection.
Yeah, there's no real right answer to some moral questions, and also it ties into like the bigger theme in like in some stories, like necessary evil. Like obviously in Halat, it was necessary for them to kill the people who knew about like greed and well, violence to save those who didn't know and were innocent. And it's that kind of like if they didn't exist and if they weren't evil, then everything that they had would be tainted. And in this case, it's the scientists having to experiment on people, which is, and they didn't do it in a nice way. They literally kidnapped them, which is not great either. But is that kind of necessary evil? Like they could have saved the human race, maybe. I mean, we'll never know now, but maybe.
Yeah. And I thought it also the whole returning to nature thing, like the I liked the flowers. I thought that was really original on the zombies, the abominations. Because whenever you read zombie movies or you read zombie comic books or normal books or movies, they're always just gory, disfigured humans. But kind of making them into that like beautiful flower scene, and even in the scenes, they're not gory. They seem kind of uh, flowy, sort of the action scenes with the abominations. And I thought that whole returning to nature concept was similar to Cloud Sky Dragons by N.K. Jemisin, which was where a story of like the Earth, humans have destroyed the Earth so much that it's basically unlivable. But there are some who decide to stay, and they stay and they adapt to the new Earth. And there's people who go and live up on an asteroid belt, and they continue to persist in developing science while the people on Earth revert back to kind of the old paleo man connected to the nature sort of thing. And I thought there was a cool connection there. That whole returning to nature, that like nature will always be the ultimate force on Earth. I thought that was cool to read about and see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially in the cloud skies story, that's definitely big nature versus man. And even this is nature versus man, as or whatever that bacteria is set out to reclaim the earth. I mean, the story itself said that most cities, turned into or got reclaimed by the earth within like months after the outbreak started. And in the cloud story, the sky turned red. Humanity stayed. We tried to live off just the earth. We kind of, they kind of rejected technology. They treated the people who had technology as outsiders who almost, they almost destroyed it the first time, but they pretty much destroyed the earth when they tried again to really save it.
Yeah, it was I like that story. Uh, reading Cloud Sky Dragons. Um, yeah, that was the whole returning to nature concept is really interesting to me too. Um,
It seems like in most stories, it's either a return to nature, or some people return to nature, and some like advance beyond the technology we have now, which that seems like a pretty big theme. And so I mean, in like the Cloud Sky story, obviously some people are reverted and some people are living on an asteroid belt around Mars, which is very futuristic. But in this story, pretty much everyone has just reverted back due to Mother Nature.
yeah. All right. Do you want to talk about the genre conventions? Um, I thought the art style was cool. It was different than any other comics I've read, and I've read a decent amount of zombie comic books. Uh, I thought the facial expressions were pretty good. Kind of the author she mixed them up a little bit, but the art itself sometimes it could be a bit boring, and there was a lot of like the characters kind of standing around and talking in like the talking scenes, and I mean it was the art style. I would say it was decent. It was good.
I agree. I mean, personally, some of like I think we talked about this before, but some of the fight scenes and like the gunfighting scenes felt a little choppy and kind of hard to follow sometimes. Like some people were here and there. I just couldn't really not that I couldn't tell what was going on. It was just kind of hard to follow, and I had to like reread it a few times or just look at it to figure it out. Other than that, I like the art style. I did like the flowers instead of like nasty gore. And anyone can just do gory stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was kind of a breakaway from the normal zombie genre. But definitely the gunfights were confusing. I remember one panel was there was two panels in the scene, and one was like a talking scene, and another was someone shooting a guard, and it kind of jumped there, and I guess that was the transition to them attacking Medical Central, and I was like, okay, I had to read that a few times, and it was I didn't really like that part of it, how choppy some of it was. And I thought the storyline was good. It was easy to understand, and I also liked how when you were reading it, there were some parts of the book, some pages where they had like a song playing or had dialogue going from different characters in a different scene. Like Daisy might be driving and they had dialogue running from different people in a different place, which felt kind of out of a movie. That was cool.
Yeah, that kind of like they're just thinking back or like kind of tuning out to the radio.
Yeah. Um, and I don't know. I felt this story itself was a little bit too short. It was kind of a smaller clip within uh, a much bigger whole, like, how do I say that? Like a much bigger story. Like I would much rather read a longer story and get kind of the full view than get this like little thing between the compound and Medical Central, because like what we don't know what happens after that. But
Yeah,
which the
because
walking.
it's basic. Sorry.
Oh no, you go.
Because it basically was like chapter 1 was kind of an intro, like talking about what happened, introducing the compounds and the characters, and it was like it went from that to like showing what a run was like, and then all of a sudden her girlfriend gets kidnapped by the medical, and then she gets kidnapped, and then she gets out and breaks everyone else out and kills everybody. It's kind of like boom, 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 stuff happening like 24/7. It was kind of I don't remember like a lot of the names because it like stuff kept happening. And there were always like more people, but it felt too like crammed in for like just 5 volumes or 5 chapters.
Yeah, and like The Walking Dead is probably it's the biggest the zombie story ever, the zombie comic book and zombie TV show. And I got felt we were talking about this earlier. I felt it was too long. Like going on 10 seasons after a lot of the main characters have died. You're kind of stringing it along. As much as I love that series, uh it's been going on for a long time, and I mean it's a moneymaker, but it's going on for too long and getting kind of boring. But this story, I felt it was not long enough, and I'd want to hear and read more about it.
Yeah, I think you gotta find a good like balance between like length of the story and how much happens in it. Because if you have like a really long story, something like The Walking Dead, and like every single episode something big happens, people are gonna like kind of start losing track. Versus even if you have a small story where a lot of stuff happens, people still might lose track. So you got to find like the middle, kind of something that isn't too long but has enough stuff to keep people interested, not too much that people can get like lost and confused in like the characters or events.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, overall, I like the story. It definitely has its flaws, but it connects to a lot of different writings we've read before, and a lot of the bigger human issues of our world. And I mean, I mean, it was a zombie comic, of course, it was fun to read. Uh, but it was I felt it went a little bit deeper than that. Do you have anything else, Declan?
I do not.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening to Pod 4 Podcast, and tune in again next time. Have a good night.
Have a nice night.